For the longest time, I was distracted between reps. Stressing about my low balance always took me out of my groove. That is, until DePaco added tools to help me see where my money's going, monitoring spending trends and sending tips on how to spend even smarter. I can even set my budget and organize my spending to save more, keeping my expenses down, all while keeping my rep count up. DePaco, your money, your tools. Open an account today. Learn more at depaco.com/shine.
All things Hawkeyes, your all-access pass. From courtside to the postgame. Iowa's News Now Sports presents Eye on the Hawks. Sponsored by DePaco Community Credit Union and Pin Seekers.
Bennett, last week when you scored 32 against Oregon, you said you didn't know you had 32 until after the game. Was that the same case for 36 tonight?
I actually did know. There wasn't like a scoreboard with the points at Oregon, so I had no clue. And my dad let me know because his career high was 34, and he let me know I didn't beat it. So I'm going to let him know after this press conference that I'm going to give it to him.
Bennett Stirtz continues to make history every week. Welcome to Eye on the Hawks, and we're breaking the glass ceiling with Madison Hricik.
Yes.
Is that how it is?
There you go.
I think I said your last name for the first time today. So, Madison, thanks for coming in today. Happy to have you here helping us out on Eye on the Hawks, of course, in the DePaco studio and sponsored by Pin Seekers. So we're going to go ahead and tee things up as we talk about the Hawkeyes men's Is this true? A 6-game win streak now we're at? I was still thinking 5. Man, we're at 6 now. Mm-hmm. Madison, you're kind of new to there. We were just saying that you have only been here for, 6 months now?
Yeah, 6 months this month.
All right. So I just want to hear overall kind of your impressions of Iowa. Had you been to Iowa before you'd even moved here, or what's been your overall impression of the state?
So this is a fun story. So I applied for this job when I was finishing up my master's at Syracuse last year. It was about, I want to say mid-May when I applied for it. I got the job I was given the job offer late July. I had never set foot in the Midwest. My first time setting foot in the Midwest was when I flew here to check out apartments.
Really?
That was the first time I had experienced anything Midwest aside from a layover in O'Hare.
Yeah.
That's kind of really it. My other it's not Midwest, but I've been to Oklahoma and North Dakota for other events, but even then I didn't experience any of it.
You've been to Central Standard Time before now.
Yes.
Okay.
I've been to Central and I've been to Mountain, but this is my first time living in the time zone. So it's been a welcome change. I like the change of pace. Living entirely on the East Coast, everything's different, but I am enjoying getting used to the new culture life here.
How was the first winter? Because I know you live in New York, so it gets cold. But was it different here?
Different in the sense of less snow and more wind.
Yeah.
I think it's the dry cold that I've determined I don't like. I was not a big fan of the dry cold. I could have used maybe a little bit more snow just so it feels a little bit more like what I'm used to. Although I will say after the snowstorm we had right after the Nebraska game, I walked immediately down to my leasing manager's office and was like, all right, so I know I said I didn't want a garage spot. Is that still up for grabs? Because I realized after a year of shoveling snow off my car every morning before an 8 a.m. class, I was over it. I was done.
This dry cold isn't so bad after all, now that I think about it. JMU grad, right?
Yes.
Okay. Enjoyed the playoff run for
I
Dukes?
was so happy.
Yeah.
I was absolutely thrilled. I know a lot of people are still on the train that Tulane and James Madison both shouldn't have been 2 G5 spots. As I've told everybody, I was like, we were just happy to be included. At the end of the day, we're having a great time. It was so cool to see, and it's such a full circle moment for me, especially because I covered the transition from FCS to FBS when I was in college there. So it was fun to see how quickly things have changed.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Did you cover any of the players? Because there's 2 players coming to Iowa from JMU, right? Did you cover any of those players?
I did not, no.
Okay.
The seniors on that Indiana team, so Aiden Fisher and all of them, they Kaylon Black was another one. They were all still at James Madison, and I covered them. Aiden Fisher, I think, was a true freshman my senior year.
Was he a JMU guy, right?
Yeah. And so all of them. So when Iowa and Indiana played, there were a lot of very familiar faces to me.
So would you have covered Cignetti then?
I have.
Really?
Yes. Okay. His middle 2 seasons of the 5.
Really?
His first year as head coach was my freshman year of college. I started covering spring of my sophomore year because that was COVID.
Is Virginia your home?
It is.
Yeah. What part?
Northern Virginia side of the city, so out near Dulles Airport.
Oh, nice. Okay. Close to DC then?
Yeah, probably no more than 30, 45 minutes, depending on how much traffic you hit on the toll road.
Excellent. All right. Well, you've been doing a great job covering the Hawkeyes over these last 6 months. So let's dive into this Hawkeye men's team and this 6-game win streak. What have you seen that's like been maybe the catalyst of this win streak they're on right now that is so different than what we were seeing out of this team in December and part of January?
Well, I think we've seen a lot of this team do a really great job of having a pretty, I guess, consistent defensive core. Their defense has proven to do well and has translated really nicely from the mid-major to the Big Ten. You obviously have a couple like games like the Michigan State game where it's just kind of like an outlier of sorts. But I think the thing that's really stepped up is Iowa's ability to not necessarily totally rely on Bennett Stirtz. Obviously, Bennett is going to carry a lot of momentum for this Iowa team. We saw that against Northwestern and with his 36 points. But you're seeing other players like Alvaro Folgueras stepping in. You're seeing Tavion Banks become an important member of this team. And I think that's really helping too, because it's not just a situation of Iowa only has to rely on Bennett. They can, and they will, and they've won games because of Bennett's ability to take over. But the fact that they have other players chipping in a little bit more now and finding their groove in this new style of play, because the Big Ten is a very different playing style than it is at mid-major or really any other conference. But that to me has been the biggest thing, is you're starting to see a couple players also step up. Something
that seems like it's lend itself to this, the difference in quality of play has been, and we've talked about it on this podcast, how Alvaro Folgueras has really stepped into what they need him to be. Do you feel like the season is kind of riding on what Alvaro can do right now? Like, is he going to be what is make or break for this team in the postseason?
I don't know if he'll be like the one and only thing. I do think that his ability to play well, to be able to shoot from anywhere, whether it's down in the paint, whether if he decides to throw a couple threes out there, because he's made a couple in some key moments that have been really big. So I think that he's definitely a part of the deciding factor of what gets Iowa throughout this postseason, whether it's the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament. But I do think he's not maybe the only factor involved either.
Who else do you see as a factor?
I think Tavion Banks' ability to just kind of grit out some tough shots. I'd love to see Tate Sage get some more points a little bit more consistently. He's shown a lot of flashes. I think he's got a ton of upside. Isaiah Howard's another one where defense is just incredible. Like, his ability to just see a pass and basically be there before it almost looks like his body registers that he needs to be there. Like, just the IQ is really, really strong. And Ben McCollum has said a lot of good things about Isaiah Howard as well too. I think if he can continue to develop that offensive side as well, that'll be really good. Honestly, the more options Iowa can open up, the better for this team, because the reality is there's going to come a point where they might reach an opponent where literally all they're going to do is just double team Bennett the entire time, and you're going to need somebody else to score 15 points in a game, or potentially multiple people to score 15 plus points in a game to be able to win.
Yeah.
I think the biggest part of this 6-game winning streak is that they didn't falter. And you look at the teams that they played, I don't think they played a top 30 team in those 6. But I think it's easy, if you look back at the Fran years too, like, you don't always get over those teams. I mean, they're very talented D1 teams in the Big Ten. And even at Indiana or at Washington, that's a game, or even at Oregon, who's not doing too hot. They almost upset Purdue a few days ago. Like, getting through the teams that you should beat, there's something gritty about that, you know, I don't think you can put like a stat to. That it's just impressive when they go through that 6-game streak, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, and it's anytime you can go on the West Coast and pick up a couple wins,
regardless
of how you win the basketball game.
Right.
You go to a different time zone where things are crazy, and you're playing at what normally is 10 o'clock at night for you, and you go out and win a basketball game. That's a big deal. It's regardless of the coach speak that can be there. That means a lot to the committee at the end of the day.
Yeah. The women certainly showed that is hard to win 2 games on the West Coast. Like, that
Absolutely.
is no small feat. That was something that I mentioned about this team before the season started. Something I said was that they would maybe win some games they're not supposed to win, and they would not lose many, if any, games they're not supposed to lose. Outside of the Minnesota loss, I feel like that has kind of played itself out to be the case, because their losses are to, who do we got? Purdue, Illinois, Iowa State, Michigan State, like, all pretty top-tier losses.
Top 10.
Teams that have
And
spent
in the
time
NET
that are not
or
currently in the top
KenPom.
10. Yeah. So, like, those are some great losses, again, outside of the Minnesota one. And so do you see that going forward? Like, do you think that this – I mean, let's not overlook the Maryland game that's going to be coming up on Wednesday night, but do you see this as a team that now is in a more prime position to possibly beat a team like Purdue or Nebraska in these next couple weeks?
I do. I do think that there's some prime opportunities. I think the one thing that this Iowa team doesn't have yet is they don't have that signature capstone win.
Yep.
When you look at the resume and you start picking what teams are going to be what seeds in that 64-team bracket in a couple months, couple weeks. Oh, my goodness. Whew.
Yeah.
Feels like it's blown by.
About a month, yeah.
I think that signature win is maybe that like key piece that Iowa still needs, and I really do think the next two games, Purdue and Nebraska, both of them being the next two home games, are massive opportunities for that kind of experience. Purdue's already sold out. That atmosphere is going to be insane. Nebraska isn't sold out, but it's also an Iowa-Nebraska game. If I've learned anything in my 6 months here, it is that Iowa and Nebraska do not get along, and so I like the fact that it just knowing what I know and what I'm going to continue to learn is that rivalry atmospheres always seem to draw pretty good crowds. So I don't know if that one will end up getting sold out, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty high capacity. So I do think those are going to be two really prime opportunities.
A couple return games too. The mayor returns to Iowa City, played at Iowa State, and coached at Iowa State, and then Price Sanford, which, man, if he would have stayed at Iowa,
He's been
he would have been
good.
that second option, and then Tavion and Alvaro could be your third, and just would be a much better team. Oh well. Just looking at when you're starting to look at it, because we're about a month away from the tournament, Iowa moved up in Joe Lenardi's bracket to a 7 seed. They'd be in Houston's bracket, so Houston's the 2 seed there. Playing St. Mary's, obviously a lot can change from now and then. But I agree with you. Like, I think if Iowa had held on to Purdue or Illinois, not held on to Illinois, but came back and beat them, maybe that bumps them up to a 6 seed. I think the lack of quality quad 1A wins is really hurting them.
Right. And
I think it's just something that it's not necessarily impossible, and I think that might be the most frustrating part of this season so far is it's not necessarily they're getting blown out by these teams. Really, aside from the Michigan State game, every other major game that Iowa's played in that quad 1A tier has been really, really close. I mean, think about it. How many fouls have to go Iowa's way for them to beat Iowa State in Hilton in December? Like that's what we're looking at right now. Yeah. So and that's where I do think like it is really feasible for Iowa to go and potentially beat Purdue or make it really difficult against Nebraska in these next couple home games.
Yeah.
Would you agree that these next two are the most gettable? Because you're looking at the back end and playing Michigan even at home, but Michigan's kind of a wagon right now, and then going to Nebraska. Like, which one do you think is more likely?
I think Saturday's game against Purdue is, in my opinion, that one I've had that circled on my calendar for like 2 weeks now. It's like if there's going to be some tomfoolery happening in Carver Hawkeye Arena, it might be this game.
Purdue hasn't played very well in the past few weeks.
They haven't, but they're still considered a quad 1 opponent and everything. So it's just, I don't know. It's just one of those where you're looking at it and you're like, that's one of those that could be weird.
Those Purdue fans were giving me crap for ranking them number 5 in the preseason polls. Is it possible I ranked them too high? Was that the problem? When was the last, I was talking, I think, with Mitch about this recently. I was like, when's the last time that Iowa had a court storming? Because I feel like beating Purdue would probably be a court storming.
That would seem likely for it.
I stormed the court, actually. It's almost 8 years, maybe not 8. But they beat Michigan, who was ranked 5th.
Okay.
I don't know if there's been one since. Let me try and look up the year real quick.
I think that when Mitch and I were discussing it, there was maybe one during Luka Garza's career.
Okay.
Like
one of the years was COVID, though.
Right.
You might be right. That might be more.
Like
actually,
maybe
it was. I think it was Luka's.
Like his sophomore year or something.
Yeah.
Or he was because junior year was the season that ended with COVID, and then he came back for his senior year. So I guess his junior year could have been one of the years too, but that too, like, is a statement on where the Hawkeye men's basketball team is as a program, that it's been at least, 6 years. You got something, Mike?
Well, this is the one I was thinking of. 2019, February 1st, Iowa beat number 5 Michigan. Okay. I took my brother to that game. So I don't know if there was one in the Luka Garza era. I could try and look for it.
Well, wait, what year did you say that was?
2019.
Wasn't that during the Garza era?
Oh, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought it, because
okay.
You're right, yeah. Well, he was in the, after the COVID, so I was thinking post-COVID, but he was there. in 2019, I believe.
The 2019 to 2021 seasons in all athletics just all feel like one giant, like a lot of things happened in those years, and we could talk about anything really in that time frame. But it's just like, I think back, like, those were the years that I started covering college athletics.
Oh, yeah?
So I'm just like, there's so much that happened in that time frame.
What happened? Oh, Caitlin Clark began her career during, like, in the empty arena
like,
time
literally,
frame?
we could go on a whole tangent on this.
Oh, yeah. Luca Garza's sophomore year. Tyler Cook was there, Jordan Bohannon, Joe Wieskamp. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How much, like, Hawkeye history did you dive into when you came to do this job? Because I know David Eichholt has told the story about how when he started covering the Hawkeyes, he watched every game of the Kirk Ferentz era, I believe, is something that he did, every football game. Like,
Jeez. That's a lot.
I'm not saying I expect you to have done the same thing for the Fran McCaffrey era, but, like, how do you study up on, like, the history of a program when you're coming to cover a school that is so, like, passionate about their sports?
Honestly, the first thing I do, and the first thing I did do, was actually watch Big Ten football media days. Because right around when I got my offer was when you all were in Vegas for all the preseason.
Not me, but
but just like everybody,
collectively,
like
yes.
future coworkers. That's when everyone was in Vegas. So I had Big Ten media days on my TV in my home, and I annoyed the living daylights out of my mother for like 3 days. I'm the only one in my family that is like a big sports person, and so anytime I have reign over the TV, it usually is sports because it's the only time I get it. And my mother was like, really? Like, she'd come out of like her home office and I'd just be like taking notes, and she was like, really? Come on now. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Not know this stuff? But so that's what it started with, and then it was a lot of reading. It was a lot of watching like YouTube videos. It was a lot of finding ways to watch like KCRG, to watch you guys. Like, it really was just a lot of how much stuff from how many different perspectives can I get as quickly as possible. Yeah. I had 2 actual books that were given to me because I went on a family trip right before I moved here. So I had 2 like actual physical books that I read on like Iowa history. One was specifically on football. One was like a history on the university of the program. Yeah. The history of the entire programs like at universities, like history. Right. That's the right wording. Yeah. And so it wasn't necessarily as much as I was watching a ton of film. Like, I had followed enough Big Ten and college football, especially because I approached this job really kind of only going into a football mindset with how close I was to the start of the season. As we were talking about, I literally showed up an hour before one of the first press conferences the parents had of the year. Yeah. So I was very much focused in on football. And then once we started going over to basketball, that was when I was, really leaning on Mike Koloss for some like ideas. I was leaning on Jeff Linder for some concepts. And that was kind of where I was like, okay, let's start watching some highlights. Let's start figuring out, like, I do remember watching Drake in March Madness last year a little bit too. Okay. So it was like, there was some familiarity, but I can't sit here and say with full confidence that I went and watched as many football and basketball games as David Eichholt did. That is all him.
Oh man, I've been impressed with that. I'm like, Mike hasn't even seen every game of the Kirk Ferentz. Are you kidding me? It's a smart idea just because there is so much like kind of like background lore from the university. Like we had again Patrick Smith, who's also a Syracuse Masters alum. Right. He's from the state of Michigan, so kind of grew up in Big Ten country, but he's a big Notre Dame fan. And so like he comes here and I'm like, do you know who Dan Gable is? No. Do you know who Megan Gustafson is? No. Do you know about field hockey? No. Like, there is just so much that you have to like learn.
I will say, I was a field hockey player in high school, so I knew I did know about Iowa field hockey ahead of time. I was a swimmer and a field hockey player in high school, so I had a pretty good understanding on field hockey.
Did you take over that beat? Are you the Gazette's field hockey writer?
I went to a couple. Field hockey games this year. Yeah, because I want to say it was my junior or senior year of high school. One of my teammates played at Iowa for a couple of years. Okay. And so like I knew about the program, like I knew about the Swarm before I even had any remnants of thought that I would ever end up here because of her, because she would talk about it. So it was like I knew a couple things, and then obviously like some of the culture stuff, like I knew about the fair catch with football. Like, I knew about that. I knew about Cooper DeJean and what he'd been doing in Philly, and then I knew about the wave. Obviously, I think that was the thing I was probably the most excited about when I took this job. Was, oh my gosh, I get to experience the wave.
That's true. Yeah, it's something special to see when you're there on football Saturdays. But we want to thank Pin Seekers for helping us tee things off today on Eye on the Hawks. In terms of the men's basketball schedule going forward, let's take a look at what is coming up next for the. Or wait, do we have a graphic, Mike? Yes.
Oh, let's do this first. We'll go back to the one topic I had.
Okay, gotcha. So we're going to take a look at the schedule. So we've kind of been discussing what's up next for the Hawkeyes. Obviously, I have the Maryland classic trap scenario that you don't want to overlook a team like this. Then we have 2 teams in the NET and the KenPom top 12 in Purdue and Nebraska. 2 games that Hawkeye fans would love to see them get a chance for court storming. And then at Wisconsin, who, has been up and down again as an AP voter. They're a team that I kind of have had my eye on a few times in terms of the top 25, and I think I might have ranked them at one point in the year. But right now, that would be a quad
one win on the road, yep,
at Wisconsin. Every week, Mike has to remind me what a quad 1 and 2 win is. But so there are ample opportunities coming up, like
3 in a row after Maryland, and you said earlier, don't look past Maryland, but I honestly think you can look past Maryland. Not the team, but like as a fan, they are awful.
Really?
But they did get a win a few days ago, now that I'm thinking about it. I can't remember who they beat.
But it was the same with Rutgers, though, when they came to town.
That's true.
Rutgers gave Iowa way more of a challenge than they probably should have, yeah?
No, I definitely agree. Yeah.
So same. Just never know what can happen in the Big Ten. Again, with Oregon keeping it tight with Purdue, just things can happen like that. So
basketball's that weird sport where it's just one thing can go haywire, and it's just everything you thought was going to happen is just no longer happening anymore.
It's just so crazy looking at this team's schedule. They're down the stretch for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games remaining as we record on Tuesday, again ahead of the Maryland game. And how are there 4? There's probably 5 quad 1 opportunities in their last 8 games, I think. They got 2 against Nebraska, 1 against Michigan. I don't know what Ohio State would be right now if that was at Carver.
That's probably a quad 2.
I think that's a 2.
Yeah, and then at Penn State, I'm sure is 3. I mean
2. I think that might be another 2.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think so.
But the opportunities are there for this team, if you were projecting right now, what would you say is their Big Ten tournament fate? Do you see them as a team all right, is the semifinals maybe the ceiling of where this team can get in the Big Ten tournament?
I feel like semifinals would be what makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where those top 4 teams that'll likely get that wonky triple bye because all 8 teams are playing, and it's just the concept of a triple bye is crazy. But I think the top 4 teams in the league are kind of solidified at this point. I think we know who are going to be those top. It's 5 through 8 that's so interesting to me right now. I think Iowa's right on that, right on the line between anywhere from 7 to 9. Is kind of where they're flexible, and that's why I think these next couple games, especially the 4 games when you include Maryland in the mix, are going to be so important. Iowa needs to, at the very, very least, split, idealistically, go 3-1 over the next 4 games, especially to kind of maintain that double bye realm, because then that puts you in a really, really good spot to make the semifinals. It's going to be really difficult to win the tournament if you have a double bye, just with how many games you have to play over the course of those many, I think it's 4 days. Yeah. But I think a semifinals appearance would be huge for this team. I think it would do great for their March Madness seeding. But I do think that's also those top 4 teams are so good that it's going to be really difficult to try and break into the semifinals round.
I'm curious now. So when you say top 4, we're talking Michigan?
Yep. Nebraska. Illinois. And then Purdue's right on that cusp.
Okay.
Or Michigan State.
Or Michigan State,
Michigan
too,
State in there too. So
I think a semifinal, I think you have to be ecstatic if you make the semifinals because you have to beat one of those 5 teams on Friday if you make it to the quarterfinals.
Absolutely.
So, that would be huge, I think, and then you're just playing with, house money. I say that a lot, but Iowa's projected to be, like you said, anywhere between a 6. I don't think they can make the 5. I think Michigan State and Purdue are going to battle for that.
It's going to be that, and that's where I'm Purdue and Michigan State go back and forth. I put Purdue just because I feel like they might push a little bit. Purdue historically seems to like to make a little push right before the conference tournament, or they just have that kind of luck in recent years.
Yeah.
But
and they have the talent for it, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to think that what they're going through right now is an anomaly, but.
And you know what that means if they do make that 6 seed, Owen. Late games.
Late game.
Hard to turn content when the game starts at 8.
Late games.
I did have one point about this Hawkeye team. And Madison, you don't know me, but I'm a negative fan, and I bring it up a lot on this podcast.
Okay.
6-game winning streak. I don't think anyone can be negative about that. The one thing I have noticed is in my eyes, I felt like the defense has kind of dropped from recent play. If you want to bring that graphic up, I was looking on barttorvik.com, which you can kind of separate dates to see where they're at, and this is the defensive and offensive efficiencies. So from the start of the season to the day before Iowa started their 6-game winning streak, the defensive efficiency was ranked 18th in the country. During that 6-game winning streak, between January 17th and February 10th, it's 88th. And now the points per game is still around 66, so it's not horrible. But Iowa plays such a slow pace that that's going to happen. So what this efficiency is, for the fans who don't know about it, it's just per 100 possessions, how much are you going to score, and then it ranks it, all the teams. So I guess, is this something you've seen? Again, the point totals have not been super high like you've seen with Fran, but I just think there's a lot of games, and USC comes to mind when I forget the guy's name already. That USC guy went up for 32.
Oh, yeah. Cam Woods.
Cam Woods, yeah. And there were times against Northwestern where the defense couldn't get a stop, and there's some other games too, but against Rutgers, and some of the games where there's stretches where the defense, it seemingly, is not playing well. Is that something to be concerned about, you think? Or do you think, I agree with your point earlier that this defense is what's carrying the team all year, but to me, I've seen kind of, and it hasn't happened in a full game, there's just moments in games where I'm like, it's not playing that well. It's not playing that well. And I think Ben even said last game against Northwestern that he didn't think they played good defense.
I think one thing that is relevant, particularly with this season, when you look at those numbers, is that you have to remember from the beginning of the season to the start of the 6-game win streak, a lot of these teams are seeing McCollum's defense and his schematics and his coaching style for the first time. So you're looking at programs that are learning how to adapt, and now we're starting to reach a point where there's enough film on Iowa that teams can break it down a little bit differently than they could have maybe 2 months ago at the start of the year. So I think some of it is these teams are starting to adjust to that, and that's making it a little bit difficult. However, I would also agree that I do think there are moments where there's lapses in defense, and I think some of that comes back to, this is where I am going to lean into a little bit of coach speak, but execution of scout reports. I mean, they've mentioned it a plethora of times throughout the year, especially the Rutgers game comes to mind, the USC games comes to mind. Basically, everybody was like, yeah, we did not execute the scout report at the beginning of this game. And sometimes that execution at the beginning of the game or in the middle of the game where you have the ability to see somebody like Cam Woods just like completely go off, I think that's where you're starting to see some of those efficiency numbers start to make it look like Iowa's defense is worse than it is. I do think the Northwestern game, their defense was not up to par. I think that probably has been one of their, I don't want to say worse because that sounds like, that sounds really pessimistic because they still won the game and they still played overall pretty decently, but like it definitely wasn't one of their better defensive performances, particularly in Big Ten play. Is it something to be extremely worried about? Not yet. Yeah. I think that when you compare 6 games to the rest of the season, it almost still feels a little lopsided in terms of comparison, especially when the offense, as you showed in the graphic, was doing pretty well in comparison. So I do think you have a little bit of a balance out scenario here. Yeah, you're taking a look at it 10th and then 88th. So obviously there's a massive difference, and that kind of balances the scales a little bit better, I think.
Not to mention that if you're listening on any of the Spotifys or whatever, and turn to the YouTube page, because the graphic we're showing now, the offense is 10th in the country in that 6-game winning streak, but it was 38th, still great in college basketball.
Yeah.
But it was 38th before that. So the offense has definitely picked up. And one of the other games I was mentioning, they probably played their worst half of defense at Washington, but in the second half, they maybe played their best defense for a half. So it does vary from game to game.
I just think it's the sample size, I think, shows a concerning stat. I think that's a very valid thing to bring up. But I think I almost feel like it's still too small of a sample size.
Sure.
And because we have seen moments like where in the Washington game where it's like, oh my gosh, like there's this defense that everyone keeps talking about. It's just a matter of continuing that over and not letting it just be a half or just a string of a couple minutes and actually have it last a full 40-minute basketball game.
It's so interesting how, like, as I look through the roster, like, we have kind of the 3 big names that it seems like the team wants to rely on for scoring, which at this point in the year seems to be Stirtz, Banks, and Fulgaris. But there have been so many guys who have had, like, their game. Like, I think you mentioned Tate Sage. Like, there's been a Tate Sage game. Isaiah Howard has had his moments. Cale Combs, Brennan Hausen even, like, had a game that was like, oh, the Brennan Hausen performance. So that seems to be the thing that, like, you would want those to start kind of coming together. Like, yeah, you've got your 3 guys who you want to rely on for scoring, but, can we get consistently 10 points out of a Tate Sage, or can we get 8 points out of Isaiah Howard? Like, that seems to be what's going to determine what that team is able to do in the postseason.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it goes back to bringing out depth more. And this was something that McCollum was talking about at the very beginning of the season of we got to find ways to get guys outside of Bennett Stirtz involved. And this is not only just getting them involved, but getting them to be a consistent involved aspect of this team. And so I think, I mean, honestly, the numbers that I know you're just kind of throwing out, but I do think they're realistic goals for Iowa, getting Tate Sage to about 10 to 12 points a game, if they can get Isaiah Howard to an average of 10 points a game, I think they're in a really, really good spot. I don't know how difficult that might be with 8 games left in the regular season, but I think that if Isaiah Howard can start continuing to build that offensive confidence in his shot, because, I mean, when he is taking shots, like, they're good looks. Like, I don't really think there's many bad looks. I'd say the same thing with Tate Sage. I don't feel like there's a ton of bad looks that the two of them are presenting, and they're one of the younger key reserves on this team that are seeing consistent minutes. So I think there's just little things that the coaching staff might still need to pull out of this team. But the fact that it's kind of younger people, like younger kids on this roster, and we're almost like nitpicking in a sense, I feel like that might be a good sign too.
Yeah.
Especially because, I mean, Tate Sage is a freshman, Isaiah Howard is a sophomore. That's I don't know, but if you're an Iowa fan, you're pretty happy about that right now.
That is true. Yeah.
Those two are almost averaging the same exact points per game. I just looked it up. So Tate Sage averaging 6.4, Isaiah Howard 6.3, and then Cooper Koch, another young guy, 7 points a game. So those three right there, I agree with you guys. Like, if you can get contributions, maybe they shift each game. Something that has to improve for Northwestern is the shooting, though. That first half shooting was not good, and there was a lot of shots not a lot of shots, but those three missed some shots in the first half. Now, they made some in the second half, and mostly that was Bennett Stirtz, but that's one thing that you hope to see when Purdue comes to town, when Nebraska comes to town, that the shooting can actually keep up with how they've been doing recently.
Sure. Feel free to. Good time to transition to the women's game now, I think. Yeah. All right, let's get over to the women's game because as good as it's been having a 6-game win streak for the Hawkeye men, we are in the midst of a 3-game losing streak right now for the Hawkeye women's team. After their 2 losses on the West Coast, I mean, Mike and I were like, excusable, like, well, no time to panic yet. The Minnesota game had me starting to, panic a little bit. I'm just like, they looked so bad against Minnesota. I just feel like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in that Minnesota game. Like, had a decent first quarter, very competitive, but like after that just didn't even feel like it was close. The second half, I think they might have gotten it down to, I think it ended up being a 6-point loss for Iowa, but just never felt like they were ever even competitive in that game. Do you feel like you're seeing a lot more of an impact of this like Taylor McCabe injury and losing her for the season now? Like, is that starting to bear itself out in a lot more negative ways for the Hawkeyes than maybe we initially thought?
I would say yes. I'm starting to lean towards yes. I'm with you. After the West Coast road trip, I was like, okay, you know what? Like, this is a brand new lineup. They really have barely made any changes all throughout the year. That's a really big vocal leader and just an overall presence for Iowa that's been really stable. And then you're putting in a true freshman and Natty Deal into that lineup. It shakes things up. You're on the West Coast. It's different. Things happen. People are human. Like, I was like, okay, two road losses, not the end of the world, especially because it really didn't bother them much in the rankings. Like, they didn't shift much.
2 spots dropped, yeah.
To me, it was the Minnesota game was kind of where I was like, okay, this is interesting. Because I think I even said to like a friend of mine, I was like, okay, if depending on how this Minnesota game goes, will dictate how I feel about the women without Taylor McCabe on this team. And it's not necessarily because I'm like, oh, throw the season away, like they're not good anymore. Like, no, they're still good. This is where we're just seeing how young they are. I think a lot of the experience on this team was doing a really good job of kind of masking how young Iowa's roster really is. And now that McCabe is out and how much presence she did bring, we're starting to see that youth kind of poke through a little bit. And it's something Jan had mentioned after the Minnesota game, is that they are young, they are learning. And the reality is this is a tough league. And Iowa had done a really, really good job of playing loose and relaxed and like themselves as we expect them to when they weren't having all of this pressure. The second that they started really climbing the rankings, you started seeing a difference in this team because you could see that they were realizing where their potential was, and that it almost felt like they were like striving to like reach other people's expectations instead of just kind of playing basketball. And I think that kind of came to a head against the Minnesota game, and you could just kind of see that they all looked tense. Like, I almost wanted to like, it was one of those things where it was like, I feel like Jan just needs to go and just like kind of like shoulder rub every single person on this team to tell them to relax a little bit. They just looked visibly nervous at times, especially I think it was one point in the third quarter when Minnesota just went on this massive run, and I was just like, they look so lost right now. And I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is where things can be. This is where the whole concept of like a team going through adversity because of an injury. This is the point of that. How are they building off of this now?
Yeah. I mean, there were so many times where it just felt like, how is Minnesota? I mean, Minnesota did shoot amazing.
Oh my gosh, they were shooting lights out. Yeah. It was impeccable.
Shot incredible. They're 18-6 right now. So this is a solid Minnesota team. That they're one of the. I mean, I would think that they've got to be ranked here pretty soon, but they're one of the few top-tier Big Ten teams that is not ranked at the moment. But so they did make shots like crazy. I mean, even if you take 3 of those 3-pointers off the board, it's like could be a different game.
Absolutely.
But there were just so many open lanes, just like right to the hoop, just like shots that I'm like, how is this not a contested shot right now? They out-rebounded Iowa by like 13, I think, which, especially with Hannah and Ava out there so much, it's like, boy, you just hate to see something like that happen when you do have so much size in your lineup. I mean, Minnesota's got size too, but to have that big of a rebound disparity, like, does not reflect positively on the Hawkeye team. So
41-28 was the rebounding margin, and the driving in the lane concerned me. I was just looking at it because Jan's talked about how Taylor McCabe has grown on the defensive end, and I don't think when she first got here she would have been labeled as a defensive player or like a good one. But when you look at the last 3 games, and I was looking at the schedule, and I was only allowed 80 points 4 times this season, if I'm looking at this correctly. One was UConn. I think you can excuse that.
Yeah.
And the other 3 were the last 3 games. 81 points against USC, 88 against UCLA, and 91 against Minnesota. You start to question if, like, she was part of that glue that, helped mend the defense together. And at this point, I don't know. I'm not, like, certain to, like, say that's the case because, again, those were 3 pretty good teams, too, especially with UCLA being a national title contender. You kind of have to wait and see. And there's 2 other good teams coming up on the schedule that could beat Iowa. I mean, I think Iowa has a good shot at winning at both games, at home against Washington on Wednesday, and then on the road at Nebraska on, is that Sunday or Saturday?
Sunday.
So those are 2 tough games, and I guess we'll see more if the defense struggles or if the week off kind of helped them.
Well, and I think that's a big thing, too, is the fact that they do have a week off, and that was something that Jan had said immediately after the Minnesota game, was that they have the ability to just kind of sit, process, and figure out, okay, what exactly went wrong these last couple games? Like, what's different? Why is this different? And I think that'll kind of be the key test of, okay, is this a flub? Is this a 3-game skid because they were kind of dealing with this injury that has impacted them a little bit more? It showed their youth a little bit more, and now they're just kind of regrouping and they can start to veer back on track? Or is this going to be something where, this McCabe injury really was a bigger deal than we all expected it to be, and they need to find a way to regroup in a faster manner before, things really start to unravel for this team? Because as of right now, like, they still have a lot to play for. And granted, I'm not saying that this season's over. I'm not saying that they're bad, like, by any means. Like, they are a good basketball team. But you start to look at their resume, and there was a chance that they were going to be hosting early, like before this skid kind of really started. I still think they have the capability of hosting. I still wouldn't be surprised if they end up hosting, but you don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose the ability to play some NCAA games in Carver. Like, what are we talking about?
You probably can't afford more than maybe 1 more regular season loss if you want to be an NCAA tournament host. Maybe 2, but
it would depend on would depend on the losses and how those opponents finish out their season, and what happens in the Big Ten tournament too. But it's just like it's a lot still to play for and a lot still to lose too.
I do have a scheduling note I want to make. So that Nebraska game, I'd forgotten about this. So that Nebraska game is actually Monday, February 16th.
Monday. Okay.
At 11
right.
a.m.
I'm sorry.
I saw 11 a.m. and I thought for sure this was a weekend game. It's the President's Day.
Yes, it is President's Day. Yes.
Totally forgot about that.
So is this one of these games where like a bunch of 2,000 screaming like elementary kids are coming to the game? Is that how this game works? Because I know a lot of teams play these like games for school field trips. Is that what this is going to be?
Don't you dare score 67 points, or the whole crowd is going to go crazy.
So this is the look at the upcoming women's basketball schedule. Again, ranked Washington, Nebraska, who has spent time in the top 25 this year. Then we've got Purdue and Michigan. Gosh, who's number 2 in the nation right now?
That's not right. I left that up.
That can't be.
That is an error. That is from the men's schedule.
Michigan men are Michigan women are number 7 though in the country right now. So
still top 10.
Yeah. So as much as we do talk about these are a lot of winnable games they have going forward. the relative winnableness does kind of change after they've lost 3 straight. Like you'd think, oh man, Minnesota easily winnable game, USC easily winnable game, and now I'm like, maybe Nebraska isn't as winnable as I once thought, or maybe Washington isn't as winnable just based on what I've seen out of the Hawkeyes over the last 3 games. But again, like I say, their goals are in front of them, and today we had a chance to talk to Jan about like the lineup that they've had, because they did put Addie Deal in there. Like, obviously, the losses are not Addie Deal's fault. We don't want to say that, like, oh, Addie Deal's in there, so now they're losing. But there has been some questions about what the lineup is going to look like. And so we had a chance to ask Jan today about, like, maybe has she looked at some lineup changes or what could be different going forward?
I'm considering all options. I'm considering all, and I think that's very true. And sometimes kids are just a little better. There's less pressure when you're coming off. And I think Addie's had a lot of pressure for a lot of good reasons, a lot of good intentions, and I think she's handled it really, really well. But yeah, I've been, studying that. Everybody, I've used a lot of analytics. I look a lot of the stats, and looking at matchups, looking at how we've started games, all the things. So that's a continual point of what I've been working on over the weekend. So that could definitely be a change-up.
Possible change coming when they host Washington on Wednesday night. That might. I mean, there's been so many ripple effects from the Taylor McCabe injury that have borne itself out in this team, and one of them seems to be, for my opinion, that like Addie Deal was coming along so nicely as a bench player. Like she was, first or second one off the bench. She'd had a couple of like games in double figures off the bench, and then when Taylor got hurt, it's like, all right, let's make her a starter now. But it seems like she was still maybe just gaining that confidence as a legitimate Big Ten scorer. And it was like good to maybe have her come off the bench, like not be in the starting lineup right away, just come in and then start putting in some buckets. And it seems like the starting lineup has not been good for her. Like it just seems like, some games she's not even really part of the offense where she's not putting up that many shots, and other games she's not scoring much. So it seems like that has almost disrupted the progress of what we could potentially have seen out of Addie Deal.
But I think that almost goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the fact that this is a younger team and she is somebody who is still learning. Like there's an adjustment, there's a learning curve to when you go from, being a high school athlete, wherever you were, AAU basketball. It doesn't matter how good of an AAU basketball player you were or what your resume is in high school. College basketball, entirely different thing. College sports, completely different. And I think that's what we're seeing a little bit, is we're seeing her adjust, and then she was put into the starting role, and because it made some logical sense to put her in that starting role, and she was kind of thrust into this position into a West Coast trip where it was really, really difficult to go out in those two environments at UCLA and USC and try and make these adjustments, learn how to, go from being a Big Ten key reserve to a Big Ten starter. And then now she's still learning. I mean, and I think that's where almost like this three-game losing streak has been really difficult for Iowa to be able to manage, because like we've mentioned, like there is a lot at stake for this women's team, but at the same time, I almost feel like it comes at a good time in the development of this McCabe injury, because of the fact that this gives Jan, the coaching staff, and the players a chance to say, okay, this is what it was looking like before Taylor got injured. This is what we're doing now. How can we make things get back on track, align a little bit more so that we're leaning more towards what happened prior to the McCabe injury rather than what has gone on the last 3 games?
Yeah, it gives them some wiggle room to figure it out before March. At the same time, I think you were alluding to this, but like, would it be better if Taylor Strimlow just started, right? She seemed like she's, as a younger person, a sophomore, like she's had more composure. She's played well pretty much, I think, every game in the past month or so. Maybe she fits that role better, and then you can give Addie, you can have her come off the bench and hopefully see her produce like she was producing before Taylor got hurt. I think that's a logical step, and I know Jan didn't rule anything out, but maybe that's what we see.
Yeah. And one other, just note, I want to say that I asked this today at the press conference, and it might be my last time asking this, that I was like, Emily Rodriguez, any update going on there? Just because with Taylor out again, having a little bit more depth would be great, having Emily Rodriguez to play in there. And kind of got the same answer from Jan, just about her back injury is still bothering her, and no real commitment on when she might return. So who knows if we see Emily Rodriguez suiting up for the Hawkeyes again this season. So the lack of depth on this team is just really what could be what hurts them down the stretch now that they, are pretty limited on who they can actually bring in there. Layla Hayes early in the season had some good minutes, but she still too as a freshman is like learning what it's like to play against Big Ten bigs. So that too is like hampering their ability to have some minutes off the bench in the post too.
It seems like a whirlwind season where there's like a couple of weeks where, like when Addie was playing well and everyone was praising her. There were a few games where Kylie came back from her injury and was the reason some fans said that they came back into Indiana and beat Northwestern, and now she's struggling. It just seems like 4 or 5 different roller coasters for each players. And I wonder how that all turns out come March, like how this team will be playing, because you saw the highs beating 3 top 15 teams, and you're like, man, this team could go to Elite 8 maybe go to the Sweet 16, maybe make a deeper run. And now in this stretch, I'm like, are they going to lose their hosting spot, right? Like Charlie Cream still has them as a 3 seed, so I think they do have a little wiggle room. But like you said, if they go 3-3 down the stretch, do they drop to a 5? They could.
It's almost like we're at a point in the year where the men and the women are in such different positions, because I feel like we could almost all sit here and like pinpoint a pretty decent idea of how the men's team could finish this season with some wiggle room. Obviously, sports are crazy. We never know what's going to happen on any given day, but it feels like there's almost a little bit more uncertainty with the women's side right now because of the fact that there's just so much unknown. But again, I think that's why I go back to this like bye week of sorts. I say bye week in air quotes because it's not really like a week, but it gives them the chance to take a moment and actually like review some things, because I haven't really had a chance to sit back and review and kind of rest up people, just let them breathe, let this team breathe, especially with how much they are playing because of the lack of depth, but then really just to let the coaches just kind of sit and use the analytical side of their brain at 100% maybe, rather than just their coaching side of the brain, because it almost feels like there's 2 sides. There's the on-court coaching where you're regurgitating everything that you're saying immediately, and then there's also the film side of you where you're just like analyzing it, you're breaking it down further, and the analyzing side takes a little bit more time just because, well, you need to be able to like really focus on that, and you can't really do that in front of know how X many fans in Carver Hawkeye Arena when you're down or something like that.
I'm going to say a name that we have not said on this podcast in a long time, Tegan Mullaney, and she's somebody who like, I mean, maybe Hawkeye fans have to be a little disappointed in like the lack of progress that we've seen there too. I mean, just we haven't hardly seen her on the court. 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 0 minutes. I mean, she's scored 10 points this entire season. As much as this is a young team, we really thought, we're really going to see a lot of freshmen and sophomores on the court this year, and we have, but I think we're surprised maybe that Tegan Mullaney is not one of those players that we saw, because she was you could say a relatively significant contributor as a freshman for the Hawkeyes, but she's just not been there at all. I mean, just, completely like a non-factor on the roster. And that's another player that it's like, boy, if she had developed a little bit more this season, that would be adding a little bit more depth, a player that does kind of play that 3-4 position that, again, would be helping this team out if she had maybe been coming along a little bit more.
She played 7 minutes against UCLA and USC. Not a lot, but very struggled. I don't think she had a shot. Looks like she had 1 point. But yeah, that was one that before the season, I think we talked about maybe if she progressed in the off season, or if I believe was she hurt coming into the year?
I remember she had a concussion during the NCAA tournament last year, and so didn't actually make the trip to Oklahoma.
She had I remember during the like the scrimmage, there was I want to say it was, I don't remember if it was her ankle or her hand, but it was something pretty minor, and I remember keeping her out of the season opener. I want to say it was an ankle, but I could be wrong. I can't remember
missing time though,
but I want to say it was the first like 2 games, but I know it was during that like exhibition scrimmage game that they had. Because that was the first. I remember that being like the first time that we like saw what this lineup could look like.
But
I wonder if that kept her out.
Yeah, but she's only played in 11 games this year. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I just wondered if she had an injury off season and maybe she was dealing with concussion issues and the development hasn't been there like it has been for like an Ava Hayden or any of the other sophomores.
Yeah, but that's just another spot that, boy, would really be nice to have seen her come along and be able to contribute and be ready to play for this team and contribute next year. Man, future's bright when it comes to Hawkeye basketball.
Houston's been a bright spot, too. I really like what she's been playing.
I've really liked how she's looked recently.
Yeah, she's been awesome. But, yeah, that's why I say the future's bright in terms of, like, both on the men's and women's side. Like, yeah, you're going to lose some star players. You know, the men are losing Bennett Stirtz. The women are losing Hannah Stolke and Kylie Fierbach, who are going to be big losses for them. But, like, with the amount of freshman and sophomore talent on both of these teams, like, there's a lot to look forward to, you know, in the next few years for Hawkeye hoops, and good recruiting wins with a player like McKenna Velitsko coming in. Like, can't hurt helping spur things along in terms of the recruiting journey. Anything else we want to touch on with Madison before she leaves the studio here, Mike?
I think we covered it all.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks for joining us on Eye on the Hawks. Madison, thanks again for joining us, coming in and helping us out. We always appreciate the insight from the Gazette and all of our peers we have in the Hawkeye recruiting world. Give us some plugs. Where can we follow you and find your stuff?
Ooh, okay. I am on X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it now, at Sporting Mads. Basically everything that I post my work in social media, it is some version of Sporting Mads or Sporting Mads 14, depending on if that user domain was taken before I claimed it myself.
Was that your field hockey number?
14 was, yes. Oh, okay. It was my hockey jersey number.
Nice.
Yeah, so Sporting Mads, I post some stuff on LinkedIn too under Madison Hricik. And so, yeah, that's about where I am. And then I have my weekly newsletter, Hawk Off the Press, every Friday morning. That's free to sign up on the Gazette website.
Excellent. All right. And we've got our own socials that you can follow Eye on the Hawks. Of course, we're on YouTube and we're on Spotify and all the places where you find podcasts. Just search for the letter I on the Hawks and you'll find our podcast where me and Mike are diving into this team just about every week. So we're going to have a lot more to cover next week. There's a lot can happen between now and then, both for the men's and women's side. So keep your eyes tuned for what we're going to be covering on YouTube and on your podcast platforms. We'll see you next time on Eye on the Hawks.
For the longest time, I was distracted between reps. Stressing about my low balance always took me out of my groove. That is, until DePaco added tools to help me see where my money's going, monitoring spending trends and sending tips on how to spend even smarter. I can even set my budget and organize my spending to save more, keeping my expenses down, all while keeping my rep count up. DePaco, your money, your tools. Open an account today. Learn more at depaco.com/shine.